everybody. It's 586, week number 3. Are you hanging in there? Are you staying vaguely cool? It's been a brutal week. But this week is nice. I've got a beach analogy for you coming up. So, a lot of this week is really straightforward, diving into the ISTE standards. If you've not looked at them in some time, in the last handful of years, they got completely revamped, and they are actually useful. Not to say that they weren't before, but they felt very like standards based kind of standards, where like, which of these standards did you meet as you're being formally observed? And now it feels like it's actually useful, um, in such a way that I was trying to kind of figure out kind of how to take my own professional habits as a tech director to the next level. And it was one of the first times I was teaching this course. And I was talking to the ISTE standards. So beforehand, I'm clicking through and I was like, oh, let's look at, you haven't looked at the ISTE standards for administrators in a while. And I look and just like, oh my gosh, these are such great ideas. I had not considered some of these. Um, the one that continues to stick with me years later is modeling good tech integration. So I kind of think of it as kind of the nesting dolls approach. So if we want students to like meaningfully um, integrate technology in thoughtful ways and to have more autonomy over their learning, that means that as director of technology, I need to do that with our teachers, right? Have them have more autonomy over their own learning when they're doing tech related PD at our school, and then figure out ways to support them in similar ways that they can support our students. So it's, part of my role is working directly with students, but then part of it is also uh, working with teachers. I'm just now realizing I'm on my webcam right there. My phone's set up. I'm like, why? The quality does not look right. We're going to keep going. That's okay. I don't know why it didn't switch over to my phone with the continuity camera, which is much sharper, but so it goes. Um, yeah, so the ISTE standards are actually helpful at this point. Um, Read through those. It's really straightforward. There's a handful of things to click on and resources um, on the week 3 page as we look at designing rubrics. Don't be afraid to dive into different tools to help you generate those or take your ideas and format them into a rubric. School AI comes to mind, where we don't. You want to be really careful with this and review the MED policies around not using AI to do your work for you, but leveraging some of these tools like Rubric Maker, Ruby Star, ThemeSpark to be able, and those are all listed on the week 3 page, using those to help format it for you. Most of what I want to talk with you about this week, though, is actually around the SAMR model, and you can listen like a double speed if you're well versed in this. There's a couple different examples and videos and resources of what it looks like. Kathy Schrock, who's an amazing human, has there's a link about her talking about that on her own website. There's a great drawing, cartoony kind of thing by a good friend, John Spencer. Spencer Ideas is what he goes by on all the internets. There's a Starbucks metaphor. The one I actually like is first written by as an infographic by a friend, Sylvia Duckworth. If you type in Sylvia Duckworth infographic SAMR, SAMR, you'll learn a bit about that. I'm going to give you kind of my own take on it. Yesterday we went to the beach because our house was 105 degrees, and we don't have air conditioning, and it was awful. And so we went down kind of near Monterey to Moss Landing State Beach, which is far less crowded. Kind of on one side you get the harbor and you get seals, and on the other side you get the actual ocean. So I'm going to give you what the SAMR model might play out in um, through our trip to Moss Landing State Beach. So the the first step is actually no tech, and that's what my wife loves the best. She will stand on a road and go, "There is beach. Beach is beautiful," and that is her idea of beach. I just really butchered like the Ken reference there, but that's what I was going for. It was a swing and a miss. The substitution, in all kind of analogies are imperfect. Um, the S is substitution is what I did with my kids. We had swimsuits on. We got like waist deep in the water, and despite it being 105 degrees where we live near San Jose, it was 65 degrees at the beach, and my goodness, was it windy and cold. And 5 minutes in, I'm like, I can barely feel my fingers. This is why I've always worn a wetsuit anything north of Ventura. But it's been a long time since I've worn a wetsuit. Not the point. The point is, that was kind of substitution. Is like, we weren't just walking along the beach. We're playing in there, getting hit by some waves. It was fun. Um, the A augmentation might be like, all right, what can we do to like more fully immerse ourselves in the ocean? Immerse, and that would be like going snorkeling, maybe, right? Like you get out past the breakers, or you're like in the harbor, and you're actually like looking out and seeing kind of the sea life underneath you. It's pretty cool, right? Maybe another version of that might be like surfing or kayaking or something, um, where you're not just like, let me play and jump and splash with my hands. Like you have something more significant. The M is modification, and for this analogy, it would be like um, going scuba diving. So going a little bit further down the peninsula to like Monterey, and there's a bunch of people like legit scuba dive in the Monterey Bay. That is very different than kayaking or snorkeling or splashing the waves or just kind of sitting on the coastline going beach. And then the R is like redefinition, where you get like Sylvia's example that I love. It's like a whole submarine, and you're like 200 feet down, and you're like, oh, there's animals I've never seen before. And the reason I love this analogy for the salmon model is I think there's less judgment about it. So much of how I was initially taught about the salmon model, which is incorrect, is that like the R is the goal, the redefinition is always what you should do, and the S, like the substitution, is like not great. But what I love about kind of the beach analogy, and I took ideas from Sylvia on this one, is that a lot of times I just want to walk and go, there's beach, sweet. Like in this analogy, it's just no tech, right? So we're talking about like how we use technology in it. If we look at like Google, or like writing as an example, no tech would be pencil and paper. The S would be like, let me type it up on Google Docs. I can access it from a couple different devices. I can rearrange paragraphs. I get spell check. If I need to change something, I just change it. I don't have to start all over with a pencil. The A might be, let me get a template from my teacher in Google Classroom. Let me add like a photo to it. Maybe add a couple links to some things. Um, get a draft, save a version, right? Like we're starting to kind of do some more, as we kind of progress. And at some point, I don't know when it stops being substitution, augmentation, modification, redefinition, but we can kind of keep adding things to where, maybe we're collaborating in real time with a classmate. And so like we're both typing, they're adding links as I'm typing, they're editing while I'm adding a photo. It's starting to look pretty different than what you could pull off with just pencil and paper. Um, then maybe we get a draft, and the teacher gives us comments on the side, highlighting, adding comment. We're able to fix that. We're able to send that into like ChatGPT and get feedback, edit our writing. We can send it off to like maybe another class or a nearby school to work on it. And then the one, I actually did this about 15 years ago. What I was struggling with was giving like in process feedback to my second graders, because there was one of me and 25 of them, and they really needed like the same kind of level of feedback, which isn't hard to give, but just to be able to like 10 minutes into their writing to hit all of them, like by the time I actually checked in with every kid, it was like half an hour later, and that's just been like a minute per kid. And so I actually worked with Scott Bedley, an amazing educator that teaches fifth grade at a school in Irvine, and we found a common time. We also did it asynchronously, and so the redefinition of writing would be, as my second graders are typing, his fifth graders are shared on the docs, and they're giving real time feedback. I like this sentence. There's a typo here. Um, you know, let's add some more descriptive language here. Simple stuff. Um, and then similarly, Scott did that with high school English teacher Sean Zebarth in Huntington Beach. And Sean was like, I don't need my kids to write, I need my kids to edit. And so Scott was there with like 35 fifth graders and, you know, giving like timely feedback, let alone real time feedback to 35 fifth graders. Like, that's hours of time. And so Scott did a similar thing where his fifth graders were getting real time feedback from some 12th graders, you know, about an hour away. Just share the Google Doc, and it's like real time feedback. And they're becoming better writers because they're becoming better editors. And so like I love kind of the different gradations of how we can do writing. And I didn't do that all the time. That was kind of a one-off thing. But then suddenly my students had that instead of just like writing a draft and then you're done. They were getting feedback in real time, and then we were able to move on, you know, for kind of the next writing lesson. And there were also times when just pencil and paper is like the best thing. Sometimes you just need a Google Doc to take notes, and it's saved in my drive, and you're done. The redefinition is awesome. We presented to a room of like 1,000 people at the Spring Q conference. That was cool. Presented at ISTE in like a, you know, one of the big keynote rooms about a similar idea about how like how are we not using Google Docs for like real time feedback? Like, we're able to redefine what writing looks like, um, and yet it's a simple idea, but it's just one of those of like it's so easy just to get caught in kind of the substitution of like just open up Google Docs and write, and then you're right and you're done. So that might be an example where you can push a little bit more. Like how can we take this technology and use it in a more transformative way for some lessons, not for all. For most of the time, pencil and paper or just Google Docs and you're done. But how might we be able to do it in a more interesting way? By the way, that's also discussion board number one. Your second discussion board is Diana Laufenberg's TED Talk about learning from mistakes. It's fantastic. You're going to watch it. You're going to love her. She's an amazing human, so kind and generous. And then your assignment is to write a lesson plan. Follow the rubric. You know how to follow rubrics. Make sure to do all the obvious things. You're going to connect it to an ISTE standard. Make sure to give a student example. You need a sample of what this looks like. You need to have a rubric. There is a sample lesson plan template that you might as well use because it's there and it helps you check all the boxes. Just follow the rubric as you do that. And yeah, that's what we've got for week number 3. If you have any questions, reach out. And yeah, enjoy watching those videos and looking forward to what you're sharing in the coming week.